There are far more than 1% of people who are non-binary. You are likely correct. The statistic I cited on 1% is from the World Economic Forum. But there are limitations to this, because non-binary has existed in so many cultures for so long, and it's not always called the same thing, not to mention all the stigma with actually coming out. I do list some of these cultures in my book when I introduce why some of my data talks about non-binary people in a social class book. And I do this by admitting that I was a homophobic, transphobic little shit. One of the things that helped me get out of that was learning about all of these other cultures that have existed for so long, because that's part of the narrative I was hearing was like, oh, this is like a new trend young people do. And not only did that not make sense, because why would somebody choose something that opens them up to so much bullying and ostracization, but it also was like, oh, this has always been a thing. Here's an excerpt from the book. The short version of how I came to recognize non-binary identities is that because of my upbringing, I believed very strongly in gender roles because I thought they were biologically natural and divinely required. As I learned about thousands of species in the animal kingdom that were homosexual and or changed biological sex, I realized something was off. I believed God made the world, so that stuff couldn't be accidental either. As I traveled more and learned more about culture as a young adult and grad student, I also learned that non-binary and trans were not new things. There have always been cultures that recognize more than two genders, such as the Hijra in India, the Kalabai in Bisu in Indonesia, the Musha in Mexico, and the Sakrata in Madagascar, or the two-spirit people in some indigenous North American cultures. I'm sure I pronounced some of those wrong. I am working on that. I continue with, I anticipate this section will not be well received by most readers, though if you've made it this far, maybe not. I was advised to take this piece of data out of the book. And I have in quotations all the things I was told. I don't want the very important things you say about class to not be heard because of transphobia. People are ready to talk about class. They're not ready to talk about non-binary. Don't waste your shot. Anna, this is such a small group of people. Think of all the people your book could help if you don't trigger the transphobes. I worried about this and I tried to justify, well, only 2% of my sample's non-binary and that has major statistical limitations. So maybe that's why I should throw it out, not because I'm a coward. But 2% is actually twice the size of the estimated global non-binary population. That's from the World Economic Forum. So that's always going to be a low number. And I have in parentheses, there was only one trans person in my entire sample, so I mostly talk about non-binary in the book. You know why I ultimately decided to leave this in the book? Because the same percent of people who are non-binary, 1%, is the same amount of people who own 50% of the world's wealth. To me, if this 1% matters, so does everybody else.